Welcome to Wicked Felina. I'm Felina. Finally, we get to the Mexican-American War. I believe this is one of the most important subjects we have to discuss today. It's causing protests across this nation, and it's causing Mexicans to flood the borders because what we know of this war is a myth. If you hear crunching in the background, that's my little doggy. He's eating Cheerios. So, crunch, crunch. That's my little doggy. Okay, I'm going to start off with a little story about the Black Hills. If I can do this through the crunching because it's so cute. He's like such a cute dog. Story about the Black Hills and how the Sioux want the Black Hills back. It was once owned by them. That's true. The Black Hills is where Mount Rushmore is located. What they want to do is they're not going to blow up Mount Rushmore. They're just not going to maintain it and let it go back into nature. They claim that there's some sacred spots there that they want to access and use, which I believe that they should be able to use anytime they want to. That's truly important. But the question was posed to the leader of the Sioux. You do know that the Cheyenne owned the Black Hills before you did, and the Sioux went to war with Cheyenne, massacred them, and took the Black Hills. And the Cheyenne, before that, warred with another nation, another tribe, and took the Black Hills. So several Native American tribes owned the Black Hills before the Sioux did. So should we give the Black Hills back to the Cheyenne, or should we try to find the first tribe that owned the Black Hills? It is quite the norm that one tribe warred with another and took their land away, massacred them and took their land away. Did happen all the time in North and South America. This was quite the norm. Well, the leader of the Sioux said, look, bigger, more powerful nations take over and take the land of smaller, less powerful nations all the time. This is just how things work. Well, in that statement, she negated the right of every Native American and every person in the whole world who claims that their ancestor owned some land that another country came in and took. Now we come to Mexico and America's conflict. Well, the reason why Mexico owned California, New Mexico, Arizona, part of Utah, and Texas was because the Spanish came over and colonized, claimed those territories. These territories were not owned by the Aztecs. See, the Mexicans are descendants of the Aztecs. And present-day Mexico is the land that the Aztecs owned. But Spain came over and colonized, basically claimed these territories. Just like France came over and claimed a bunch of territories. And England came over and claimed a bunch of territories too. This is how Texas became a part of America. Texas was frontier land. Really nobody on it. Very, very sparsely populated. And the dictator, the emperor dictator of Texas, who had just fought a war with Central America, because this particular emperor, his designs was to move up into North America and Canada and keep warring and taking land and move south and keep warring with those indigenous people and take all of their land. He wanted to be the king of all the Americas. And when he got an army big enough, then he would move to Asia and Europe and take that. This guy was into conquering, and he wanted to take everything. In his eyes, manifest destiny, which they claim that Americans, that was our thing, manifest destiny, sea to shining sea, and we're just going to take everything from one sea to the next. Well, actually, this guy took the cake because he wanted all of the Americas, and he would have taken the world if he could. Beginning with the Central American Federation War of Independence, where the Central Americans fought to free themselves from the chokehold of the Mexican dictator. The idea of manifest destiny was ripe in the minds of Mexicans and its leaders, desiring to capture land owned by small Native American tribes. I remind them, as far as America is concerned, they should not throw stones. Just finished warring with Central America and the native peoples there, and he lost, but he was trying his best to take it. Well, he wanted Americans to move to Texas, and they thought they were going to settle there and build up a civilization, just like the rest of the Americas, modern as they could get. Well, the Emperor of Mexico said, look, you must become Mexican and you must convert to Catholicism. And so they said, okay. But just like anybody who's abusive and controlling, as you hear these stories about children who are abused, wives or partners who are abused, the abuser has a thing. It's called changing the rules and not letting the person that he's abusing, he or she is abusing, know that the rules have changed. And so because the rules have changed and you're following the old rule, then you get punished. Well, this is what a dictator is. And this is what these people were living under. And this is part of the reason why the people of Texas, because it was becoming a bit oppressive, wanted to annex themselves from Mexico. He said he did not want Texas to be built up, settled and built up. He wanted it to remain frontier land. The only reason why he asked the Anglos to move here, convert to Catholicism, and become Mexicans was because he wanted to drive the Comanche and other Native American tribes out of Mexico. He wanted them killed, and he wanted to war on them and get them out. Yes, that's true. Mexicans are part indigenous Americans, and they are part Spanish. But as far as this guy is concerned, I guess it's no different than the other tribes who go to war and take over, swallow up smaller tribes. Big fish eat little fish every day. Well, they didn't want to do this. They were quite and most definitely against this. So what they did was they went to war with Mexico and they annexed themselves. Texas wanted to join America. Texas wanted to live under the Constitution of America and have the rights, the same rights as the Americans did. Texas asked the president at the time, hey, look, could we join your nation? And it was the northern states that said, no, we don't want Texas to join the nation because we don't want the slave states to get any bigger and more powerful than they already were. See, the president at the time was a Democrat, and the slave states were all Democrat. And the other party were the Whigs. The Republican Party had not been formed yet. The Republican Party was formed to abolish slavery. Texas had to wait 10 years before America allowed it into the Union, which kind of dispels a rumor right there. the rumor that the Anglos, the Americans, wanted to take over the continent from sea to shining sea. The whole idea of manifest destiny. They just wanted to gobble up all the land they possibly could. If they did, they certainly wouldn't have waited 10 years to take Texas into the Union. So that myth has been dispelled. And in fact, another truth has emerged. It was Mexico that wanted to take over everything. Okay, this is getting really fun. All right, so at that point, Mexico decides, we're going to go to war with America. And very quickly, America won that war. Though their artillery and their strategy of war was modern, they were a bit disorganized, and they were fighting a lot of other wars because their intent was to keep taking over as much as they could. They just keep moving and keep conquering people. Wow, just look at all the wars that Mexico is involved in against native tribes. How could they do this to indigenous tribes all over the Americas? Well, that's just what indigenous people did. No surprise, people on the other side of the pond did it too. From the indigenous people of the Yucatan who went to war with them twice to free themselves of their grip and take their land back, to the tribes in the Sinaloa region, a series of wars to take their land back. Mexicans were descendants of Aztecs and Spanish conquistadors, who La Raza believes the fusion of the two makes them a superior race. Wonder what that means. They want the same thing as the Emperor Santa Anna, take the Americas and send the whites back to Europe. What right have they to take land away from indigenous tribes? Their right is that they consider themselves superior, more powerful, just big fish eating small fish. That's all. So, rather quickly, the war was over with, and America planted its flag in Mexico City. It had won all of Mexico at that time. Imagine we would not be in the predicament that we are today had America taken all of Mexico. Because today, there probably wouldn't even be drug cartels. We have a very strong system of government that was against crime and punished people who committed crimes, rather than letting the drug cartels go crazy. The reason why the drug cartels grew so profusely is because the government of Mexico was getting kickback money from it. It was basically working hand in hand with the drug cartels. So why would you want to get rid of the drug cartels? The drug cartels make $69 billion off of Americans, and Americans are dying from those drugs at a rate of 64,000 a year, probably closer to 65,000 now. So we would have good education in all the states, same thing as in America. And if something wasn't right, something wasn't fair, just like during the 60s when we had the civil rights movement, we would protest inequalities because Americans have the right to protest. Not so under a dictatorship. The Mexicans don't have the right to protest. Just like in Cuba, you have political wrongthink. They put you in front of the firing squad and kill you. That's the way things work in Mexico. And the government gets an awful lot of money from these drug cartels. Drug cartels that are the ones that are taking people through Mexico to the American border. Basically, you pay off the drug cartels and they will take you or your child, and they will also sell them into sex slavery. Probably 100% of these people are raped. because the people and the children being sent with these drug cartels through Mexico are given the abortion pill Plan B. That's very interesting that the parents know that their child is going to be raped. And they, I guess, want to become Americans so badly, or live in America, or reclaim the land that they feel was theirs to begin with, that they will put their children in a vulnerable position to be raped. But they've got the Plan B, but they don't know. You still need the cure for the venereal disease or the disease that might kill you, and the mental anguish. You know, that's something that Plan B can't really eradicate. Sadly. What would Mexico be like if America kept its flag planted in Mexico? Well, there wouldn't be any drug cartels, and there would be a lot less deaths by drugs. See, the drug cartels pretty much run Mexico, and they kind of go hand in hand. See, it is against the law in Mexico to go through their border. They've got a wall and they've got machine guns there. Either you get killed or you get put in jail. So you have to pay the drug cartels to take you through. And the drug cartels give a kickback to the Mexican government. And 100% of these people get raped on their way through. That's why children, those children who came up alone, their parents gave them Plan B, which is the abortion pill. And of course, there's a lot of things that come along with rape. And a lot of these children end up as sex slaves, sex trafficking, and a lot of them end up in MS-13 because you got to pay back the drug cartels because they demand thousands of dollars to take you or your children through the border. This is an awful evil, isn't it? But the Mexican government allows it, even though it's against the law, because the drug cartel pay the Mexican government. See, the Mexican government is awfully corrupt. And usually you have, from president after president, embezzles billions of dollars from the Mexican government, from the people of Mexico, and then they take off, usually to Switzerland. But America, alas, America said, and this doesn't usually happen, it actually never happens, when one country wins the war over the other country, usually they take it, they swallow it up. This didn't happen. And America, you can kind of pat America on the back for this one. America gave Mexico back half the land that was owned by the Aztecs before the Spanish came over and took some territory north of the Rio Grande. And America, before the war, said, look, instead of going to war, we'll give you $30 million for this land. We'll give you $30 million, which is in the if you translate that today, it'd be probably trillions of dollars, right? But Mexico said no. At that point, America gave back half the land, which is land that the Aztecs owned, and gave Mexico $15 million. So America paid for the land that it took. This doesn't happen in war, especially when somebody declares war on you and you're the one who's like, oh my God, somebody's declaring war on us, and you fight to the death. You usually don't give that country money for the land that you won in the war when they've declared war on you. That doesn't happen. And you don't give half the land back, which is what happened. And the most interesting part of this is You know how you hear all these stories about how great immigration is, and it was immigrants that built this country, which is true. In the first part of the 19th century, there was a quota. Every country had a quota per year. Well, some countries were designated white. Other countries were designated black. Southern Europe, basically Southern Italy and Greece, were considered black. They were considered non-white countries. And the countries that were not white, the allotment of those countries was the smallest of all. Like the darker you got, the less amount of people they would allow from that country into America. At that time, America had a surplus of low-skill jobs, and they needed workers to do those jobs. And there was the condition. When you came over, there was no welfare system, there was no Section 8 housing, there was no food stamps, there was nothing. And you could not be, according to the law, you could not be a burden on the state. So when you came over, you had to have a job waiting for you. You had to have someone to live with that would pay for your food and pay for the lodging. And you could not have any disease. You were checked when you got to Ellis Island. And if you had some kind of illness, you were quarantined or you were sent back to your country. Very interesting. Basically, you had nothing and the country was not going to support you. So much for the incessant, noxious narrative regarding the need for a constant, uninterrupted flow of immigrants because it was they who built this country and made it what it is today. These came under the auspices of a nation who only offered hard labor, and if you could not pay your own way, the motto was leave or die. There was no government handout. If you fell, no social service existed to care. It wasn't going to say, hey, look, you can get these under the table jobs for a quarter of the wage, and the government is going to pay for everything else. It's going to give you housing, it's going to give you food, it's going to clothe you, and it's going to give you free medical care, which is something that the people who came over immigrated from Europe did not get. Free medical care. That's something Obama made sure that passed before he opened up the border and started bringing refugees in. He made sure he could give them all free medical care. We were under the guise that all Americans would be covered. The Americans that could not afford health care, everybody would be covered. As it turns out, about 30 million Americans are still not covered. But that's another story. Anyway, so those were the conditions, and these were the go-getters that were ready to basically die. Many of these people went back to their home countries because they couldn't make it in America, and America wasn't going to pay for them, there being no welfare system like there is now. After the Mexican-American War, a very interesting thing happened to the Mexicans. I heard on the radio tonight a young woman who was protesting, the children in cages, where when Obama was president, he had 2.5 times the amount of children in cages. Children that came here all by themselves, never mind the children that were brought by their parents, which is interesting because when you do break a law, any American breaks a law, the parent is separated from the child because the parent goes to jail, not you got to separate them because one has committed a crime. But that's the way it works for Americans. But she said, these are human beings, and it shouldn't be about the color of their skin. And it is fascinating to me how liberals, whatever you call them, progressives, Democrats, everything is about the color of the skin. Every wrong and every evil is about the color of the skin. And when the Aztecs, the original Mexican people, they would go to war when they didn't have enough people to sacrifice. They would go to war with another nation so they can get more people to march up the pyramids and to get their hearts cut out with an obsidian knife their legs and arms cut off, and then they would cannibalize them. It was absolutely fantastic. According to the Aztec culture, and according to the Incas and the Olmecs and the Toltecs, and pretty much every single Native American tribe, they went to war with each other, and there was a tremendous amount of human sacrifice. The Aztecs would even fillet people alive by removing their skin while they were still alive and then wearing it. And somehow this is considered today as shamanistic. And the Incas would put their children on top of mountaintops to freeze to death. And there's a little boy that they found mummified remains, little boy that had vomit and diarrhea on him because he was so scared. He knew he was going to die. And then the Olmecs and the Toltecs were, according to forensic archaeology, found that they would torture their victims for 2 weeks straight, torture them before they killed them 2 weeks straight. So when you read, it's very interesting because when you read about these cultures, they'll say, yes, and they all had slaves. All of them had slaves. They will say, oh, it wasn't race-based. You know, the sacrifice and the slavery was not race-based. Oh, so it's okay then. Oh, since there might be more related, kind of like family, it's okay to do all the raping and the murder and the sacrifice. It's okay. And the slavery. It's okay. That's what drives me crazy about these liberals, about these progressives who don't get that. And they think everything is about skin color. Well, apparently in the Americas, when all the sacrificing was done, it wasn't about skin color. You were in the wrong tribe. You were in the other tribe. They wanted sacrifice. This is also a way to control their people by doing these human sacrifices all the time. It was fear and control of the people. And people of darker skin did this, okay? It's not just the white people who are evil, okay? We're all evil, equally good or equally bad, right? In many ways. Well, here's the really interesting part. Not only did America give Mexico back half the land after the war was won. And this is the rule of war. This is the rule of war in all the tribes and all the civilizations of the Americas and the world. The winner takes it all. It's an old saying. America not only gave Mexico back to them, gave half back the land that the Aztecs owned. They gave them $15 million for the land that they now, the other half, they paid them for that land. So technically, America is America and it's owned by America. Not only did this happen, whereas in all the other countries of the entire world, there's a quota system. Mexico got a special place in the laws of immigration of America. There was no quota. Mexico had that special status. No quota. The amount of people that wanted to immigrate here, we would allow. Also, not one bit of land was taken away from any Mexican. Every Mexican that lived on the land that America won in the war, which America also won Mexico, but the rest of that land, north of the border, which is today, any Mexican that was living there was not sent back to Mexico, was not deported, but became instantly a fully fledged American citizen with all the rights of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the right to self-government and the right to own land and the right to have a lawyer have representation. Any Mexican that was living in present-day America instantly got rights that the Mexicans who stayed in Mexico never got from their dictator. Another thing, not only was there no quota, every Mexican had a special status, unlike the people of Europe, where some were designated white and some dark and some black. All Mexicans, for the purpose of immigration, were white. Should I say this again? All Mexicans, for the purpose of immigration, were white. So they had a special status that they could immigrate here and become citizens over the Europeans. There was no quota, and they were white. They got to the line first. We won the war, and we gave them special status forever. Mexicans are Caucasians. Caucasians doesn't mean white. White is a different designation. People in India, they're all Caucasian. And they're different shades, dark to light, right? So Caucasian doesn't mean white. They are Caucasians, the Mexicans, but they had the special designation of being white. In 1980, it became more advantageous to be not white, to be Native, because Native Americans can go to school for free, they don't pay taxes, and they don't have to go to war. Political correctness started to move in. The idea of the evil white person started to move in. And people started to forget the history of Mexico and the Aztec civilization and all the other civilizations in the Americas. We have to stop this whole idea. What the problem really is these people are not white and these people are white. Mexicans got a special status. They still have a special status, except right now you have drug cartels that are leaving headless bodies on the borders. They started filming decapitations before ISIS started filming them. There is a tremendous amount of rape and murder caused by the drug cartels. There's a tremendous amount of Mexicans that I'm sure would love to not live in a country with a government that's supporting the drug cartels, where they're working hand in hand. I'm sure there are, if the people in Mexico only knew that America won the whole kit and caboodle, and from Montana all the way to the tip of Mexico itself could have all been America. In fact, personally, I would be living down in Mexico. I wouldn't be living in this cold part of the country, for God's sakes. More people would want to live in Mexico rather than present-day America, because it's warmer and there would be resorts everywhere and more coastal homes. I mean, really, when you think about it, it would have been a much better thing, and there would be lower crime. There would always be crime, but lower crime, and children being educated very well. And the Mexicans today think, there's a lot of Mexicans who want to create a new state called Aztlan, which is not America or Mexico. They want to bring back the Aztec civilization, which is crazy. I say it's crazy, but these people probably do not know the truth. The only thing they know is the white man is evil, and the white man came and took our land. And hopefully I've presented to you an argument or a case and the truth of history. Let's erase the myth. This is the truth. And unfortunately, it's too bad we can't make Mexico our 51st state. We would have to go to war with the drug cartels. They're much too powerful. There'd be too many deaths. It's a horrible situation. But the mistake was to give half of Mexico back, which was very generous, and give Mexico $15 million. That was extremely generous. Having no quota on immigration and designating all Mexicans as white. That was actually, by doing that, proves that there was no mistreatment of Mexicans. Nothing was taken from Mexicans or Mexico. And anyone living in the Americas kept their land, became American citizens immediately. No land was taken away from any Mexican. If you wanted to be an American, just stay here, come here, stay here. That's it. That's your land. The land that you're living on is the land that America gave them. That's the way it worked. You can just claim pieces of land. So hopefully this has corrected the myth of the Mexican-American War. One little kiss from Felina. Goodbye.